Nicholas Bellini signed the last document at exactly 11:47 p.m., his penmanship controlled and deliberate across the dotted line. The contract authorized $3 million in movement through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, money that would eventually fund expansion into New Jersey territory. Clean, efficient, untraceable. 40 years old, and he still reviewed every financial detail personally. Trust was a luxury men in his position couldn't afford. His office stretched across the top floor of a private building in Manhattan, walls lined with dark wood and leather-bound books he'd never read, but kept for appearances. Security monitors blinked silently in the corner, showing feeds from 12 different properties he owned across 3 states. The city sprawled beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, a grid of lights and movement that never truly slept. He reached for his espresso cup when the intercom buzzed. "Boss." The voice belonged to Marcus, head of his security detail. "Someone's at the street entrance. Young woman, soaking wet, says she has a delivery that can't wait." Nicholas checked his watch. Nearly midnight on a Thursday. "We're not expecting anything. She's insisting. Says it's from Hartford, Connecticut. Urgent floral delivery with a note attached. She won't leave it with us. Hartford." Nicholas felt something cold settle in his chest, though he couldn't identify why. He didn't know anyone in Hartford. "Bring her up. Search her first." 3 minutes later, his office door opened. Marcus stepped aside, revealing a young woman clutching a black box wrapped in silver ribbon. Water dripped from her hair onto the marble floor. Her jacket soaked through, sneakers squeaking as she shifted her weight nervously. Nicholas stood slowly, studying her. Maybe 18, 19 at most. Pale skin, brown hair plastered to her shoulders, green eyes that darted around the office taking in expensive furniture and security cameras before landing on him. "I'm sorry for the hour." Her voice was steadier than he expected given how she trembled. "My mom said this absolutely had to be delivered tonight. She was very specific about the address and the time." Nicholas gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit, you're freezing." She hesitated, then obeyed, placing the black box on his desk carefully, as if it contained something fragile. "I work at Grant Flowers in Hartford. My mom owns it. She's been sick and she called me around 9 tonight begging me to drive this here personally. She wouldn't explain why, just kept saying it was important, and I'd understand later." Nicholas examined the box. Black roses, he could see them through the transparent lid. Expensive. Rare. Not the kind of arrangement someone sent casually. A small cream envelope was attached to the ribbon with his name written in handwriting he recognized instantly even after 18 years. His throat tightened. "Amanda. What's your name?" he asked quietly, not looking up from the envelope. "Haley. Haley Grant." Grant. Amanda's maiden name. Nicholas felt the world tilt slightly, though his expression remained neutral. He studied the young woman more carefully now, noting things he'd missed in his initial assessment. The shape of her jaw, sharp and defined like his own. The way she held herself with straight posture despite obvious discomfort, refusing to slouch even when exhausted. The green eyes watching him with intelligence that assessed and calculated. His eyes. The intensity. The color. The way they narrowed when focusing. He saw his mother's eyes every time he looked in a mirror, and now he was seeing them in a stranger's face. "How old are you, Haley?" She frowned slightly at the personal question. 18. I graduated high school in May. Why? 18. The timeline aligned perfectly with when Amanda disappeared. Nicholas picked up the envelope with fingers that didn't shake, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Thank you for the delivery. Marcus will escort you back to your car." "Wait, aren't you going to open it?" "Eventually." He kept his voice even. "You drove 2 hours in this weather. You should get home safely." Haley stood, wrapping her arms around herself. "My mom's really sick. I don't know why this delivery mattered so much to her, but she was crying when she called. I've never heard her that upset. If there's something in that note that's important, maybe you could just tell me everything's okay." Nicholas looked at her directly for the first time since she sat down. Those green eyes pleaded with him, worried about a mother she clearly loved despite not understanding tonight's urgency. Something in his chest constricted painfully. "Everything will be handled appropriately." It was the best reassurance he could offer without lying. "Drive carefully." Marcus appeared at the door. Haley glanced between them uncertainly, then nodded and followed the security guard out. Her wet footprints marked the marble floor in a trail leading to the elevator. The moment the office door closed, Nicholas tore open the envelope. Amanda's handwriting covered a single piece of cream cardstock, the letters slightly shaky as if written by an unsteady hand. "Nicholas, if you're reading this," Haley delivered the roses safely. "She doesn't know what the note says. She doesn't know about you, about us, about any of it. The girl who just left your office is your daughter. I was pregnant when I disappeared 18 years ago. I'm sorry I never told you. I'm sorry for a lot of things, but I'm not sorry I kept her safe. I found the documents in your apartment that night, the ones about the Ferraro shipment and what happened to the witness. I understood then what your world really was. I was 20 years old and terrified, and I was carrying your child. I couldn't bring a baby into that life. I couldn't watch her grow up wondering if she'd lose her father to violence or prison, or worse, if she'd become a target herself. So I ran. I moved to Hartford, used my maiden name, worked 2 jobs until I could open the flower shop. I raised Haley alone, and I told her father left before she was born. It was easier than the truth. I'm dying, Nicholas. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave me 8 to 12 weeks 3 weeks ago. I'm in Yale New Haven Hospital right now, managing pain that won't stop. I don't have time left to do this slowly or carefully. Haley needs protection. She's smart and strong and talented, but she's also alone. When I'm gone, she'll have no one. The flower shop barely makes profit. She turned down a design scholarship in Manhattan to take care of me. And now I'm leaving her with nothing. You have resources I never had. You can keep her safe in ways I couldn't. I'm not asking you to be her father. I don't have that right after what I took from you. I'm asking you to protect her. Please. There's a box of photos and documents at my apartment. 2247 Maple Street, Hartford, Unit 3B. Key is under the blue flower pot on the patio. They'll prove everything if you don't believe me, but I think you saw it in her face the same way I do. She has your eyes, Nicholas, your determination, your stubbornness. I'm sorry I stole 18 years from you. I'm sorry she doesn't know your name. I'm sorry for all of it, but I'm not sorry she exists. And I'm not sorry I kept her away from your world long enough for her to have a childhood. Protect her. That's all I'm asking. Amanda Nicholas read the letter 3 times, his hands perfectly steady even as his pulse hammered against his ribs. 18 years. A daughter. Amanda had been pregnant, and he'd never known, never suspected, never had the chance to choose. He thought back to that time. He'd been 22, ambitious and reckless, rising quickly through the Bellini organization after his father's death. Amanda had been his escape from that world, a nursing student who laughed easily and made him feel almost normal. Then she disappeared without explanation, and he'd eventually moved on because men in his position didn't have the luxury of dwelling on lost relationships. Except she hadn't just left. She'd fled, carrying his child. Nicholas stood abruptly and walked to the windows, staring out at Manhattan's glittering skyline. Somewhere in Connecticut, Amanda was dying in a hospital bed, and somewhere else in Connecticut, probably driving home through the rain right now, was a daughter who didn't know he existed. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Ryan Foster answered on the second ring despite the late hour. "Boss, I need complete background on Amanda Grant, age 38, Hartford, Connecticut. She owns Grant Flowers on Main Street. I need medical records from Yale New Haven Hospital confirming cancer diagnosis. I need residential history going back 18 years. I need financial records, employment history, everything. Timeline? Now, tonight. I don't care who you wake up." A pause. Ryan knew better than to ask questions when Nicholas used that tone. "I'll have preliminary information within 2 hours. And Ryan? Total discretion. Nobody outside our inner circle knows about this." "Understood." Nicholas hung up and returned to his desk, spreading Amanda's letter flat on the polished surface. He opened the black box, revealing a dozen perfect black roses, their petals dark as ink, their scent rich and slightly bitter. Black roses for death, for endings, for secrets finally revealed. He pulled up security footage from the lobby cameras, rewinding to when Haley entered the building. The timestamp showed 11:43 p.m. He watched her speak to Marcus, clutching the black box protectively. Even in grainy footage, the resemblance was undeniable once he knew to look for it. The way she tilted her head when listening, the set of her shoulders, the sharp focus in her expression. His daughter. The words felt foreign and impossible. Nicholas opened his laptop and searched for Grant Flowers, finding a modest website with photos of arrangements and a small staff page. Amanda's photo showed a woman who'd aged 18 years, but still had the same kind eyes he remembered. Next to her stood Haley, smiling in a green apron, surrounded by flowers. The girl who'd sat in his office 20 minutes ago, worried about her sick mother, and confused about tonight's urgent delivery. She had no idea her entire world was about to change. His phone rang at 1:47 a.m. Ryan's voice was grim. Confirmed. Amanda Grant. Diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 12 weeks ago at Yale New Haven Hospital. Prognosis 8 to 12 weeks. Declined aggressive treatment. Currently admitted for pain management. Before you ask, yes, she's really dying. I spoke to a contact in oncology. There's no coming back from where she is. Nicholas closed his eyes briefly. What else? Grant Flowers established 14 years ago. Modest but stable income. Amanda worked as an ER nurse for 12 years before opening the shop. Daughter Haley Grant, born March 15th, 18 years ago at Hartford Hospital. No father listed on birth certificate. Clean records, honor student, accepted to floral design program at NYU, but declined enrollment. Currently runs the shop with her mother. March 15th. Nicholas calculated quickly. Conceived around June, 18 years ago. The timeline matched perfectly with when Amanda disappeared that summer. I need surveillance on the shop and on Haley Grant starting immediately. Discreet, nothing that will alarm her. 4-person rotation, professionals only. Protection detail? Information gathering for now. I want to know her routine, her contacts, any potential threats in her orbit. And Ryan? Send someone to 2247 Maple Street, Hartford, Unit 3B. There's a box of documents under a blue flower pot on the patio. I want it retrieved and brought here. On it. Boss, if you don't mind me asking, what's this about? Nicholas looked at the black roses on his desk, at Amanda's letter, at the security footage frozen on an image of a young woman with his eyes. Family business. That's all you need to know right now. He hung up and sat in silence for a long time, city lights blinking beyond the windows. 40 years old, head of one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the East Coast. And tonight he'd discovered he had a daughter. A daughter who'd grown up without his name, without his protection, without any knowledge of who or what he was. Amanda had taken 18 years from him. 18 years of watching Haley grow, of first words and school plays and teenage rebellion. 18 years of being a father. But Amanda had also given Haley 18 years of safety. 18 years away from men like him. Away from the violence and fear that came with the Bellini name. Away from rivals who would use a child as leverage. Away from federal investigations that could destroy families. Away from a life where normal was impossible. Nicholas didn't know if he was angry or grateful. Maybe both. His phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Surveillance team in place. Subject arrived home safely, 1:52 a.m. Subject. His daughter was now a subject under surveillance. Nicholas rubbed his temples, feeling the beginning of a headache that had nothing to do with the late hour. Tomorrow he would cancel his morning meetings. Tomorrow he would start figuring out how to protect a daughter who didn't know he existed. Tomorrow he would decide what to do about Amanda's request. But tonight, he sat alone in his office surrounded by black roses and 18 years of questions he'd never get to ask, feeling something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in decades. Fear. Nicholas didn't sleep. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, he'd reviewed Amanda's letter 17 times and watched security footage of Haley's visit on loop, until he'd memorized every gesture, every expression, every nervous shift of weight, as she'd stood dripping water onto his office floor. Friday arrived with gray clouds and persistent drizzle. He canceled his morning meetings without explanation, ignoring the confusion from his lieutenants who weren't accustomed to last-minute schedule changes. Anthony Mancini, his second-in-command, sent 3 increasingly concerned text messages before Nicholas finally responded with a curt, personal matter: handle the Newark shipment yourself. The box from Amanda's apartment arrived at 9:23 a.m. Ryan brought it personally, setting the worn cardboard container on Nicholas's desk without comment. Inside, 18 years of fatherhood he'd never experienced lay preserved in photographs and documents. Baby pictures showed a wrinkled newborn with dark hair and closed eyes. Toddler photos captured a little girl with pigtails grinning gap-toothed at the camera, holding flowers almost as big as she was. School pictures progressed year by year. Kindergarten with missing front teeth, 3rd grade with braces, middle school with awkward bangs, high school with confident smile and those unmistakable green eyes. Nicholas spread them across his desk chronologically, watching his daughter grow up in fast forward. Amanda had documented everything. First day of school photos with handwritten dates on the back. Report cards showing straight A's and teacher comments about exceptional student and natural leader. A blue ribbon from a middle school science fair. Certificates from floral design competitions. Every milestone he'd missed. His hand stopped on a photo of Haley around age 10, standing in front of what must have been the newly opened Grant Flowers, wearing overalls and holding a watering can. She looked proud and happy. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, smudge of dirt on her cheek. Amanda stood beside her with an arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing. They'd built a life without him. A good life, from what he could see. Haley had grown up loved and safe, away from the violence that defined his world, away from the enemies who would have used her as leverage, away from late-night phone calls about arrests or bodies or wars between families. But she'd also grown up without a father, without knowing where she came from, who she came from. Amanda had made that choice for all of them. Nicholas closed the box carefully and looked at Ryan, who'd been standing silently by the windows. "Tell me everything." Ryan opened a leather folder, his expression professionally neutral. Amanda Christine Grant, born June 3rd, 38 years ago in Hartford. Only child, parents deceased in car accident when she was 22. Worked as ER nurse at Hartford Hospital for 12 years before opening Grant Flowers 14 years ago. Never married, no significant relationships on record. Lived at the same Maple Street address for 16 years. Daughter, Haley Elizabeth Grant, born March 15th, 18 years ago. Father unlisted on birth certificate. Attended Hartford Public Schools. Graduated with honors last May. Accepted to NYU's floral design program with partial scholarship, but declined enrollment in July. Works full-time at Grant Flowers with her mother. 2 other employees. Sarah Mitchell, 55. Been with them 11 years. Mia Collins, 16. Apprentice hired 8 months ago. Nicholas absorbed the information. Haley had given up college to care for her dying mother. The choice spoke to loyalty and sacrifice, traits he recognized because he'd built his life on them. Medical records? Ryan's expression tightened slightly. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 12 weeks ago. Spread to liver and lymph nodes. She declined chemotherapy after oncologist explained it would only extend her life by a few weeks while making her violently sick. She's currently admitted to Yale New Haven Hospital for pain management. Morphine drip, palliative care only. How long? My contact in oncology says she's got maybe 6 weeks, could be less. This type of cancer moves fast. 6 weeks. Nicholas felt something cold settle in his chest. Amanda was dying, and she'd used her remaining time to bring him a daughter he never knew existed. The timing wasn't coincidence. She was tying up loose ends before she ran out of time. I need to see her. Nicholas stood abruptly. Today. Make it happen. Ryan didn't question the order. I'll call ahead. You'll have private access outside regular visiting hours. Should be ready by 8 tonight. The rest of Friday crawled past with excruciating slowness. Nicholas attempted to focus on legitimate business, reviewing contracts for his restaurant ventures and real estate holdings. But his mind kept drifting to Hartford, to a hospital room where his former lover was dying. to a flower shop where his daughter worked completely unaware of who he was. By 6 o'clock, he'd given up on productivity. He changed into a dark suit and waited, watching the city transition from day to night, lights flickering on across Manhattan's grid like stars appearing in an urban sky. Ryan drove him to New Haven in silence, the SUV eating up miles of highway, while Nicholas stared out at passing scenery without really seeing it. They arrived at Yale New Haven Hospital at 7:52 p.m., entering through a side entrance where a nervous administrator waited to escort them through hallways empty of regular visitors. "Room 847, the administrator said quietly. "I'll make sure you're not disturbed." Nicholas stood outside the closed door for a full minute, hand on the handle, feeling something he hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. Then he pushed it open. The private room was dimly lit, medical equipment beeping softly in the corner. Amanda lay in the bed, and Nicholas barely recognized her. The vibrant woman he'd known 18 years ago had been replaced by someone skeletal and pale, her brown hair thin and limp against the pillow, her green eyes sunken but alert. Those eyes widened when she saw him. "Nicholas!" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. He moved closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. "Amanda, you got the roses. And the letter." He kept his tone neutral, not ready to reveal the storm of emotions churning beneath controlled exterior. "I got the box, too. The photos." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Then you saw her, Thursday night. She delivered them herself, confused about why it mattered so much. She has no idea who I am." "I know. I'm sorry." "Sorry." Nicholas let the word hang between them. "You stole 18 years from me, 18 years of my daughter's life. You ran without a word, without giving me a choice, and you think sorry covers it?" Amanda's hands trembled as she adjusted the oxygen tube under her nose. "You would have chosen her over your world? You never gave me the chance to find out. I found the documents, Nicholas. The witness report about the Ferraro shipment. The photos of what happened to him. I understood what you really did, what your family really was." Her voice gained strength despite obvious pain. "I was 20 years old and pregnant. I couldn't raise a baby in that life, so you ran, changed your name, built a whole life somewhere else. Never once thought I deserved to know I had a daughter. Every single day." Amanda's tears spilled over. Every birthday, every milestone, every time she asked about her father and I had to lie. But every time I thought about telling you, I remembered those photos. That witness had a family too. He had kids. And someone made him disappear because he saw something he shouldn't have. Nicholas's jaw clenched. He remembered that case, remembered being 22 and ambitious and convinced he was invincible. He'd been part of the crew that handled the witness. He'd seen things, done things that would have horrified Amanda if she'd known the full extent. "I was a kid playing at being dangerous," he said quietly. "I'm not that person anymore. But you're still in that world, still surrounded by violence and enemies and danger." Amanda coughed, the sound wet and painful. "I gave Haley 18 years of normal, Nicholas. 18 years of school and friends and worrying about grades instead of bullets. That was worth every lie I told." Nicholas moved to the chair beside her bed, sitting down heavily. "Why tell me now? Why not take it to your grave?" "Because I'm dying and she'll be alone." Amanda's voice broke. "The flower shop barely makes enough to cover rent and utilities. She gave up college for me. She doesn't have aunts or uncles or cousins. When I'm gone, she'll have no one. And your world doesn't care about collateral damage. If someone figures out who she is, they'll use her against you. How would anyone figure it out? You buried the connection pretty thoroughly." "I thought I did. But she looks like you, Nicholas. Same eyes, same expressions, same way of standing like she's ready for a fight. Someone who knows you well enough would see it eventually." Amanda reached out weakly. "I need you to protect her. That's why I sent the roses. Not to hurt you or ask forgiveness, just to give her a chance to survive what comes after I'm gone." Nicholas looked at Amanda's outstretched hand, so thin he could see every bone and vein. After a long moment, he took it gently. "What do you want me to do?" "Tell her the truth, but carefully, so she doesn't hate me for lying her whole life. Give her security, but don't trap her. She's independent and stubborn." Amanda managed a weak smile. She gets that from both of us. And let her choose whether she wants you in her life. Don't force it. She might reject me entirely. I know. That's the risk. But at least she'll know where she came from. At least she'll have resources and protection. Amanda coughed again. Harder this time. There's something else. In my nightstand at home, there's an envelope. Instructions for my funeral, accounts, passwords. The shop is in Haley's name already. But there's also a letter for her. Don't give it to her until after I'm gone. Nicholas nodded slowly. All right. Promise me, Nicholas. Promise you'll protect her. Even if she wants nothing to do with you. Promise she'll be safe. He met Amanda's desperate gaze and saw the fear of a dying mother trying to secure her daughter's future. Despite his anger, despite 18 years of lies, he understood that fear. I promise, no one will touch her. Amanda's tears flowed freely now. Thank you. And Nicholas, I am sorry. For all of it. For running. For lying. For taking her from you. But I'm not sorry she exists. She's the best thing I ever did. Tell me about her. The words came out rougher than intended. Tell me who she is. So Amanda did. She talked about Haley's childhood, about scraped knees and school plays and teenage rebellion that consisted mostly of staying out past curfew. She talked about her daughter's talent for flower arrangements, her stubborn determination to make the shop succeed, her kindness to employees and customers. She talked until exhaustion overtook her, and her eyes drooped despite fighting to stay awake. Nicholas sat beside the bed long after Amanda fell asleep, watching machines monitor her failing body. A nurse entered at some point to check vitals, glancing at him nervously before hurrying back out. Ryan had clearly made it known that Nicholas Bellini was not to be disturbed. At 11:34 p.m., he stood and leaned over Amanda one final time. I'll take care of her, he said quietly. You have my word. Amanda didn't wake, but her breathing evened out slightly as if she'd heard anyway. Nicholas left the hospital carrying the weight of promises he wasn't sure how to keep. In the SUV, Ryan asked, Boss? Contact the hospital administration. All of Amanda Grant's medical expenses are covered, no exceptions. Hire the best palliative care specialists available. Make sure she's comfortable. And the daughter. Nicholas looked out at dark highway stretching ahead. Surveillance only for now. I need to figure out how to tell an 18-year-old girl that her entire life is about to change. Ryan nodded and pulled onto the highway. Nicholas leaned back against leather seats, mind racing through scenarios and strategies. He'd built an empire on calculated decisions and careful planning, but there was no playbook for this. Somewhere in Hartford, Haley was probably closing up the flower shop or heading home, completely unaware that her dying mother had just handed her over to the father she never knew existed. Unaware that Nicholas was already arranging protection she didn't know she needed. He thought about the photos in the box, about 18 years of moments he'd never get back. Then he thought about Amanda's fear that someone would discover the connection and use Haley as leverage. She was right to be afraid. The Bellini name came with enemies who wouldn't hesitate to hurt an innocent girl if it served their purposes, which meant Nicholas had limited time to figure out how to protect a daughter who didn't know him, didn't trust him, and had no reason to accept his help. The SUV merged into Manhattan traffic, carrying him back toward his office where contracts and shipments and the normal business of his criminal empire waited. But normal had shifted irrevocably. He had a daughter now, whether she knew it or not. And he would keep her safe, no matter what it cost him. Sunday stretched endlessly. Nicholas sat in his penthouse office with the box of photos spread across his desk like a timeline he couldn't touch. Baby Haley grinning toothlessly. 7-year-old Haley holding a trophy from some school competition. Teenage Haley laughing with friends in front of the flower shop, face lit with genuine happiness he'd never provided. He picked up a photo of her around age 5, wearing a princess costume for Halloween, holding Amanda's hand while trick-or-treating. Amanda looked young and tired, but content. They'd built something real in Hartford, something far from his world of violence and calculated moves. Part of him resented it. The larger part understood why Amanda had run. His phone buzzed at 2:17 p.m. Ryan's name flashed across the screen. We have a problem, Ryan said without preamble. Surveillance team spotted a black Audi sedan circling the flower shop 3 times this morning, parked across the street for 40 minutes, then left. Plates registered to a shell company out of Brighton Beach. Nicholas's blood went cold. Brighton Beach meant Russian. Bratva? Running it through our contacts now, but the methods match. Someone's watching her. How long has this been going on? Unclear. Team only started Friday night. Could be coincidence. Could be they've been there longer. Nicholas stood abruptly, pacing to the windows overlooking Manhattan. Russians had been probing his territory for 2 years, looking for weaknesses they could exploit. The Kozlov faction out of Brooklyn wanted his shipping operations and weren't subtle about their intentions. But how the hell had they connected Haley to him so quickly? Pull financial records on everyone in my inner circle for the past 6 months. Someone talked. Someone always talks. Already on it. I'll have preliminary results by tonight. Nicholas ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Anthony Mancini answered on the 3rd ring. Boss? I need a meeting with our Brighton Beach contact. Today. Tell him it's about territorial boundaries and I'm not in a patient mood. You think the Russians are making a move? I think they're sniffing around where they shouldn't be. Set it up. The meeting happened at a neutral restaurant in Queens at 6:00 p.m. Dmitry Volkov arrived with 2 bodyguards, his weathered face showing amusement at Nicholas's barely controlled anger. They sat in a private room while untouched food grew cold between them. You have something to say, Bellini? Dmitry's accent was thick, his tone mocking. Your people are in Connecticut, Hartford specifically. I want to know why. Dmitry's expression didn't change. Connecticut is open territory. We go where business takes us. There's no business for you in Hartford. Stay out. Or what? You'll start a war over some suburban nothing town? Dmitry leaned back, studying Nicholas carefully. What's in Hartford that has you so nervous? Nicholas kept his face perfectly neutral. I don't get nervous. I'm giving you professional courtesy by telling you directly. Connecticut is off limits. Pass that message to Kozlov. I'll pass it along. Dmitry smiled coldly. But Kozlov doesn't take orders from you. The meeting ended with thinly veiled threats on both sides. Nicholas left, knowing he'd just painted a target on Hartford by showing his hand. But he'd also sent a clear message. Touch what was his, and there would be consequences. Back in Manhattan, Ryan was waiting with a laptop and grim expression. Found your leak. Christopher Morris, your accountant, 48 years old, handles your restaurant finances. He's got gambling debts totaling $200,000 to a bookie with Russian connections. Nicholas felt rage settle cold and heavy in his chest. When did he start talking? At least 3 weeks ago, maybe longer. Phone records show multiple calls to a burner number traced back to Brighton Beach. Get this. He never mentioned your daughter specifically because he didn't know about her. But he mentioned you'd been asking questions about Hartford, Connecticut. About a flower shop on Main Street. Said you seemed personally invested. 3 weeks ago. Before Nicholas even knew Haley existed. Morris had sold speculation and vague details, but it was enough for the Russians to start watching. Enough to put Haley on their radar as something valuable to Nicholas, even if they didn't know why yet. Where is Morris now? Home. Wife and kids are visiting her mother in Boston until Tuesday. He's alone. Nicholas stood without another word. Ryan followed, already knowing what came next. Some problems required permanent solutions. By Monday morning, Christopher Morris no longer had gambling debts or the ability to share information. Nicholas returned to his penthouse at 4 a.m., showered methodically, and made coffee while watching the sun rise over Manhattan. He felt nothing about Morris's death. The man had endangered his daughter. There were no second chances for that. At 9 a.m., he called Ryan again. I want 4-person protection detail in Hartford starting now. Rotation schedule, discrete placement. They need to blend completely. Parameters? 2 positioned as regular customers at the coffee shop across from Grant Flowers. 1 as a delivery driver for the business 2 doors down. 1 as security for the jewelry store on the corner. They watch, they document, they do not engage unless Haley is in immediate danger. And Ryan? Only our most trusted people. No one who might have loose lips. I'll have them in place by noon. Good. And get me everything on Haley's daily routine. When she arrives, when she leaves, where she goes, who she talks to. I need to know her patterns. The surveillance reports started coming in by Monday evening. Haley arrived at the shop at 8 a.m., left at 6:30 p.m. She had lunch at the same deli 3 times a week. She visited her mother at the hospital every evening from 7 to 9 p.m. On her days off, she grocery shopped, did laundry at a laundromat, occasionally met friends for coffee. A normal 18-year-old life. Except now, she had Russian mobsters watching her and a father she didn't know, orchestrating protection she couldn't see. Tuesday afternoon, Nicholas had his weekly meeting with Vanessa Collins at the Crimson Lounge. She managed his most profitable bar with efficiency that rivaled his own, never asking questions about the less legitimate aspects of his business. They'd worked together for 8 years, ever since he'd pulled her out of a trafficking situation in Brooklyn and given her a legitimate job and new identity. Vanessa noticed immediately that something was off. She set down her inventory reports and studied him across the booth. "You look exhausted." "That's not like you." "I'm fine." "You canceled 3 meetings last week. You've been distracted. Anthony thinks you're sick. The others think you're planning something big." She paused. "I think it's personal." Nicholas considered deflecting, then decided Vanessa's insight might be useful. "Family situation. Complicated." Her eyebrows rose. "You have family outside the organization?" "I do now. Recently discovered. It's creating security concerns." Vanessa was quiet for a moment, blue eyes sharp and assessing. "If rivals know about this family, they'll use it as leverage. You need to get ahead of it before someone makes a move. I'm working on it. Work faster. Whatever this is, whoever they are, they're vulnerable as long as you're keeping distance. Bring them close or let them go. But this middle ground is dangerous." Nicholas knew she was right. Staying in the shadows while watching Haley put her at risk, without giving her the resources to defend herself. But approaching her meant revealing everything, meant watching her face when she learned her entire life was built on lies. "I'm planning to make contact Wednesday," he said finally. "Establish a connection under a business pretense. See how she reacts before revealing the truth." "Good. And Nicholas, whatever complicated history is there, remember that family doesn't ask for permission to upend your life. It just does." The words stayed with him through Tuesday night as he reviewed surveillance photos of Haley working in the flower shop, arranging bouquets with focused concentration. In one image, she was laughing at something Sarah said, head thrown back, completely unguarded. In another, she was helping an elderly customer carry flowers to their car, patient and kind, despite obvious busy day. His daughter. The phrase still felt foreign. Wednesday morning, Ryan called with concerning news. "The Russians are getting bolder. 2 different men now, rotating shifts. They're not hiding anymore. One of them went into the coffee shop and sat watching the flower shop for 2 hours yesterday. Our guys recognized him. Viktor Morozov, low-level enforcer for Kozlov. Haley notice anything?" "Hard to say, but Sarah, the older employee, definitely noticed. She mentioned to Haley that some guy had been buying coffee across the street multiple times. Suggested calling the police. Haley brushed it off as nothing." Nicholas swore quietly. The Russians were escalating, testing boundaries, which meant he was out of time for careful planning. He needed to make contact, establish himself as part of Haley's life, before someone made a move that put her in direct danger. "I'm going to Hartford today. Set up a cover as a corporate client looking for weekly floral arrangements for multiple businesses. Make it legitimate enough to pass scrutiny." "Already done. You're representing Bellini Hospitality Group, looking for a florist to service your restaurants and hotels. It's clean, documented, completely above board." At 2:30 p.m., Nicholas stood outside Grant Flowers watching through the window as Haley worked. She wore jeans and a gray t-shirt with the shop logo, hair pulled back in a ponytail, hands moving efficiently as she assembled a wedding centerpiece. Sarah was helping a customer at the counter. A teenage girl, probably Mia, was watering plants near the back. Normal. Simple. Everything his world wasn't. Nicholas took a breath and pushed open the door. A small bell chimed. Haley looked up, and for a split second before recognition set in, he saw his own eyes staring back at him. Then her expression shifted to professional politeness. "Good afternoon. Can I help you?" She didn't remember him from Thursday night. Or more likely, She remembered a tired, wealthy man in an expensive office, not someone who'd show up at her shop in Connecticut. Nicholas was grateful for the anonymity. "I'm looking for someone to handle floral arrangements for several of my businesses. Restaurants, hotels, events. I was told Grant Flowers does excellent work." Haley's face brightened with the kind of enthusiasm that came from genuine passion for her craft. "We do. Let me show you our portfolio." She gestured to a table near the window, and Nicholas followed, hyper-aware of every detail. The way she moved with unconscious grace. The slight callus on her thumb from handling flower stems. The faint scent of roses and soil that clung to her clothes. His daughter, standing 3 feet away, completely unaware that he'd already promised her dying mother to protect her with his life. "So, tell me about your businesses," Haley said, opening a leather portfolio of photos. "What kind of aesthetic are you going for?" Nicholas forced himself to focus on the cover story, answering her questions while studying her face for traces of himself, of Amanda, of 18 years he'd missed. And all the while, through the window, he could see Viktor Morozov sitting in the coffee shop across the street, watching them both with calculating eyes. The clock was ticking. Nicholas had maybe days before the Russians figured out why Haley mattered, maybe hours before they made a move. He needed her trust, and he needed it fast. Wednesday afternoon arrived with pale sunlight filtering through clouds that threatened more rain. Nicholas stood outside Grant Flowers at 2:30 p.m., watching through the window as Haley worked on what looked like a wedding centerpiece. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, trimming stems and positioning white roses in a crystal vase. Sarah stood at the counter helping an elderly customer, while the teenage girl Mia watered plants near the back wall. A normal scene. The kind of small business interaction that happened thousands of times daily across America. Except Nicholas knew what Haley didn't. Across the street in the coffee shop, Viktor Morozov sat nursing his 3rd espresso of the day, eyes periodically drifting toward the flower shop's entrance. Nicholas had spent the morning reviewing Ryan's latest surveillance reports. The Russians weren't hiding anymore. They'd escalated from passive observation to active interest, which meant Kozlov's people had decided Grant Flowers represented something valuable connected to Nicholas Bellini. They just didn't know what yet. He needed to establish legitimate contact before the Russians made their move. Needed to create a reason for his presence in Haley's life that wouldn't immediately scream vulnerability to anyone watching. Business relationships were clean, explainable, normal. Nicholas pushed open the door. A small bell chimed overhead. Haley looked up from her work, and for a brief moment before professional recognition set in, he saw his own eyes reflected back at him. Then her expression shifted to polite attention. "Good afternoon, can I help you with something?" She didn't recognize him from last Thursday night. Or if she did, she didn't connect the tired man in the expensive Manhattan office with someone who'd appear at her Hartford shop. Nicholas was grateful for the disconnect. "I'm looking for someone to handle floral arrangements for several of my businesses," he said, approaching the counter. "Restaurants, hotels, corporate events. I was told Grant Flowers does quality work." Haley's face brightened immediately, the kind of genuine enthusiasm that came from someone who truly loved their craft. "We do. Let me show you our portfolio." She gestured toward a small table near the window, and Nicholas followed, hyper-aware of every detail. The way she moved with unconscious grace despite being on her feet all day. The slight callus on her right thumb from handling thorny stems. The faint scent of roses and damp soil that clung to her gray shop t-shirt. His daughter, standing 3 feet away, completely unaware that her dying mother had already handed her future into his protection. "So, tell me about your businesses," Haley said, opening a leather portfolio filled with photos of past arrangements. "What kind of aesthetic are you going for?" Nicholas settled into the chair across from her, noting how the afternoon light caught the green in her eyes, making them almost luminous. "I run 5 establishments in Manhattan and 2 in northern New Jersey. High-end restaurants mostly, 1 boutique hotel. I want something sophisticated but not pretentious. Natural but polished. That's actually my favorite kind of brief." Haley flipped through pages showing centerpieces in warm earth tones, minimalist arrangements with clean lines, seasonal displays that emphasized texture over flash. "A lot of corporate clients want big and loud. But the really elegant spaces understand that flowers should complement the environment, not compete with it. She spoke with confidence that surprised him. This wasn't a teenager playing at running a business. This was someone who'd absorbed years of knowledge and developed her own design philosophy. "Your mother taught you?" Nicholas asked, carefully casual. "Since I was 4 years old." Haley's expression softened. "She'd let me sit at the work table and make terrible little bouquets while she handled real orders. By the time I was 12, I could do basic arrangements. By 16, customers were requesting my work specifically." Nicholas watched her hands as she talked, gesturing to emphasize points about color theory and seasonal availability. Those were Amanda's hands, long-fingered and expressive. But the way she used them, direct and purposeful, that came from him. "She's not well now," he said quietly. Haley's hands stilled on the portfolio. "No, she's in the hospital. Has been for a few weeks." She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. "Which is why landing contracts like this matters. I need to prove the shop can sustain itself even when she's not here to run it." The honesty caught him off guard. She could have deflected, maintained professional distance. Instead, she'd given him a window into the pressure she was carrying. 18 years old, mother dying, business barely profitable, and still she showed up every day and made it work. Pride swelled in his chest. Unexpected and fierce. This was his daughter. Amanda had raised someone strong. The door opened with another chime, and an agitated middle-aged man entered carrying an empty box. He walked straight to the counter, ignoring Nicholas entirely. "This is unacceptable, Haley." He slammed the box down. The flowers arrived wilted again. "My wife says if this happens one more time, we're going back to that place on Broad Street." Haley stood immediately, her professional mask clicking into place. "Mr. Wells, let me see the box." She crossed to the counter, and Nicholas watched the interaction carefully. Sarah appeared beside Haley, clearly protective of her young boss. The older woman's jaw was tight, with barely contained irritation. "The delivery left here in perfect condition," Sarah said firmly. "I checked it myself." "Then someone ruined it in transit," Wells snapped. "I don't care whose fault it is, I paid for decent flowers." Haley picked up the box, examining the interior. Her fingers traced the moisture level, checked the way the stems had been packed. Nicholas recognized the assessment process of someone trained to find problems and solve them efficiently. "Mr. Wells, I understand your frustration." Haley's voice remained calm, but carried authority that belied her age. "We take pride in every arrangement that leaves this shop. If something went wrong with the delivery, we want to make it right." She pulled out an order form, checking dates and delivery times. Nicholas saw the moment she identified the probable issue, a slight narrowing of her eyes that he recognized because he made the same expression when analyzing problems. "I'm going to remake your arrangement at no charge," Haley said, meeting Wells's eyes directly. "And I'll personally review our delivery procedures with the driver today. But I need you to do something for me. If this happens again, call us immediately while the flowers are still fresh. That way, I can see exactly what went wrong and fix it." The response balanced firmness with diplomacy. Wells muttered something that might have been agreement, and left with a promise of new flowers within 2 hours. Sarah exhaled loudly, clearly holding back less polite commentary. Mia had watched the whole interaction wide-eyed from her position near the back. "That happens more than it should," Sarah said quietly. "People who don't know how to care for flowers and blame us when they die." Haley murmured something reassuring to the older woman, then returned to Nicholas with an apologetic expression. "Sorry about that. Not the most professional display for a potential client. You handled it well." Nicholas studied her face. "You kept the customer and maintained your team's respect. That's not easy." Haley seemed genuinely surprised by the observation, a faint flush rising in her cheeks. For a moment, the confident professional faded, and he saw the 18-year-old who wasn't used to praise from anyone outside her small circle. "It's just part of running the place," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "When Mom got too sick to work full days, I had to learn fast. This shop is everything we have. Everything we have." The words hit harder than she could know. Nicholas glanced out the window where Victor was shifting position in the coffee shop, clearly trying for a better angle to observe them. Time to move this forward before the Russians moved first. Here's what I'm thinking, Nicholas said, pulling Haley's attention back to business. A 3-month trial contract, reception arrangements, and 2 featured displays for each of my 7 locations. If the quality matches what I'm seeing here, we expand to full service. Haley's eyes lit up before professional caution reasserted itself. 3 months is perfect. Gives us time to adjust to your style preferences. Work out logistics. She pulled a standard contract from a folder, pen already in hand. I'll need some information. Company name, tax ID, delivery addresses, preferred timing. Nicholas provided the details for Bellini Hospitality Group, his legitimate business front. Everything checked out clean for any audit or investigation. Nothing in the documentation pointed to the criminal empire that funded it. Sarah approached with 2 cups of coffee on a small tray. For you both. Client this size deserves real hospitality. Sarah, Haley protested mildly, but she was smiling. Nicholas accepted the cup, noting how Sarah positioned herself slightly between him and Haley. Protective. Watchful. The kind of employee who'd notice if something seemed wrong and wouldn't hesitate to act. He filed that away as both complication and potential asset. Thank you, he said simply. Sarah nodded and retreated after giving him one more assessing look. Haley filled out the contract with practiced efficiency, asking clarifying questions about delivery schedules and payment terms. When she slid it across for his signature, Nicholas signed Nicholas Bellini in clear, controlled script. She glanced at the signature, then at him. Nicholas Bellini. So you're the owner, not just a representative? I prefer to handle important contracts personally. That's refreshing. She stapled the pages together neatly. Most big companies send assistants for this part. I'm not most people. Something in his tone made her look up sharply, as if trying to decode a meaning beneath the words. Nicholas held her gaze steadily, seeing his own intensity reflected back at him. After a moment, she looked away first, collecting the signed paperwork. We'll start deliveries next week, she said. If you want, I can bring a sample arrangement to one of your locations tomorrow. That way you can approve the style before we commit to full production. The offer gave him exactly what he needed. Another meeting. This time on his territory where security was absolute. Bring it to my administrative office in Midtown. He pulled a business card from his wallet, sliding it across the table. 2nd floor. Ask for me at reception. Haley studied the card. Simple design, just his name, title, phone number, and address. Nothing flashy. I can do tomorrow afternoon, she said. Work here in the morning, prep the arrangement, then drive down. 2 hours from Hartford to Manhattan. Nicholas calculated rapidly. He'd need to increase security at the building. Have Ryan coordinate surveillance on her route. Ensure Victor or whoever replaced him didn't attempt to follow. That works. He stood, extending his hand. Looking forward to seeing what you create. Her handshake was firm, confident. Her palm was warm and slightly rough from work. For a brief second, Nicholas felt the absurdity of the situation, shaking hands with his own daughter as if they were strangers conducting a business transaction, when what he really wanted was to tell her the truth, to explain everything, to promise he'd protect her from the storm he could see building. But that would come later. First, he had to secure her trust, the only way that wouldn't immediately frighten her away. Thanks for the opportunity, Haley said. Mom's going to be thrilled when I tell her we landed a contract with 7 locations in Manhattan. Nicholas felt his chest tighten at the mention of Amanda. When you see her, tell her the quality of her business impressed someone with high standards. Haley smiled, genuine warmth lighting her face. She'll love that. She's always worried the standards will slip with her in the hospital. He wanted to say more, wanted to ask about Amanda's condition, about how Haley was handling the weight of knowing her mother was dying. But that crossed the line from professional interest into personal territory he hadn't earned yet. I'll see you tomorrow, he said instead. Nicholas walked out into the gray afternoon, hyper-aware of Victor's attention tracking him from the coffee shop. He crossed to his car where Ryan waited behind the wheel, not looking back at the flower shop, even though every instinct wanted one more glimpse of the daughter he'd just met. He got in the back seat and waited until they'd turned the corner before speaking. He saw everything. Saw you enter, saw you sit down, saw contract papers on the table. Ryan merged into traffic smoothly. Couldn't hear the conversation, But for someone like him, visual confirmation of your interest is enough. Nicholas watched Hartford scroll past the window. Business interest is explainable. The problem comes when they figure out it's more than that, which is why you need to move faster with her, Ryan said. Get her somewhere secure before they connect the dots. She's coming to the office tomorrow afternoon. Bringing a sample arrangement? Ryan's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. You want full security protocol? Discreet but absolute. I want eyes on her from the moment she leaves Hartford until she's back home. And Ryan, make sure our people know she's priority protection. Not just surveillance anymore. Copy that. Boss, when are you planning to tell her? Nicholas stared at his reflection in the tinted window. Soon. But not until I'm sure she's safe. Amanda made me promise to let Haley choose whether she wants me in her life. Can't make that choice if she's dead because I moved too fast. They drove in silence for a while, highway miles disappearing beneath them. Nicholas pulled out his phone and opened the folder of photos Ryan had compiled. Haley at various ages, growing from baby to child to teenager, to the young woman he'd just met. 18 years compressed into digital images. His phone buzzed with a text from Anthony Mancini. Russians asking questions about your Connecticut interests. Want me to send message? Nicholas typed back. No. Let them wonder. But double security on all Hartford assets. He pocketed the phone and closed his eyes, the day's tension finally catching up. Tomorrow Haley would walk into his world, even if she didn't know it yet. Tomorrow he'd see her surrounded by his people, his security, the framework of power and protection he'd built over 20 years. And somewhere in the days after that, he'd have to find words to tell an 18-year-old girl that her entire life was built on a lie, that her father wasn't dead or absent but had been 40 miles away in Manhattan the whole time, and that knowing him meant accepting a world of violence and danger she'd been carefully sheltered from. But first, he'd keep her alive long enough to have that conversation. The SUV carried him back toward Manhattan, while behind them, in a small flower shop in Hartford, Haley Grant probably had no idea that signing a contract that afternoon had just made her the most protected person in Connecticut, whether she wanted to be or not. Friday afternoon crawled toward 4:30 p.m., with the kind of humid stillness that preceded storms. Haley had sent Sarah home early for a doctor's appointment, leaving just herself and Mia to handle the last hour before closing. Traffic outside was light, most people already heading home for the weekend. Inside Grant Flowers, Haley worked on final touches for tomorrow's delivery to Nicholas Bellini's office. She'd chosen cream-colored roses mixed with eucalyptus and white ranunculus, arranged in a low rectangular vessel that would work on a reception desk without blocking sightlines. Elegant, understated, exactly what he'd described wanting. Mia was in the back room organizing supply shelves, her voice occasionally drifting forward as she hummed along to music playing from her phone. The 16-year-old had been working at the shop for 8 months, eager to learn and surprisingly dedicated for someone her age. Haley stepped back to examine the arrangement from different angles. The contract with Bellini Hospitality Group represented the biggest account they'd landed in 2 years. Her mother would be thrilled when Haley visited the hospital tonight and shared the news. Amanda had built this business from nothing, and even from a hospital bed, she worried constantly about its survival. The front door's bell chimed. Haley looked up with her professional smile already in place, expecting a last-minute customer. 2 men entered. Both wore dark jackets despite the warm weather. Both had the kind of hard eyes that made something cold settle in Haley's stomach. The first man was tall with a shaved head, the second shorter but broader through the shoulders. Neither looked like they'd ever bought flowers in their lives. "We're actually about to close," Haley said, keeping her voice friendly but firm. "But if you need something quick, I can help." The tall one looked around the shop slowly, assessing. When his eyes came back to Haley, they were flat and calculating. "You're Haley Grant?" Warning bells screamed in her head. She shifted her weight slightly, putting herself between the men and the back room where Mia was still working. "Can I help you with something specific? You can come with us." The shorter man moved closer to the counter. Nice and quiet. Nobody gets hurt. Haley's heart slammed against her ribs. Every self-defense class she'd taken in high school suddenly felt useless in the face of 2 men who clearly knew what they were doing. "I don't know what you want,"